So I'm not sure if this is like a morbid curiosity question or if it's like an attempt at a gotcha, but to be honest, yes, she does know. In fact, she helps. I do the dispatching because she's too young for that and she's not strong enough to do it correctly and humanely, but she does help with the butchering. I think it's important that everyone, including kids, knows where their food comes from. It makes them more grateful and makes sure they don't waste. And one of her favorite meals is rabbit. And right now, when it comes to butchering, we're working on anatomy and physiology. She knows what each organ is and what its function is. The skills I am teaching my children are important. And if they want to use them in the future or they don't, will be their choice. But raising your food and teaching your children how to butcher out an animal is not a bad thing. At least in my opinion. I will say she enjoys chickens more than rabbits just because she likes plucking feathers. But in many ways, we've become so disconnected from our food that what I do seems like a taboo. Which is unfortunate because when we become disconnected from our food, we're more likely to waste and not realize the amount of work and labor that goes into it. And in the case of raising an animal, we become disconnected from the life we are raising. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents in it. I'll tag my husband in this post and see if he has anything else to say. But I'd love to hear everyone else's opinion because we don't all need to agree, but I do know a lot of farmers that they do look at butchering as part of the process of raising their own meat and a skill that they should teach their children. So you can definitely raise mini Rex for meat. However, it is not the most efficient thing you can do. I do eat my mini Rex because that is a byproduct of raising rabbits and all rabbits are edible. With that being said, they are not my first choice. I don't butcher my mini Rex out till close to 20 weeks. And that's because I'm waiting for them to, for one, get large enough for it to really be worth it, and for two, to verify that they aren't going to be show animals. Whereas a Californian, I'm butchering them out much sooner. You're talking 8 to 10 weeks. Sometimes 12 if I'm really lazy. The meat yield is also completely different. A mini Rex, I might get 2 to 2.5 pounds of usable meat off the carcass, and that will feed my family for a meal with some leftovers. Whereas a Californian at 5 pounds, when I butcher it out, is going to yield me around 4 to 5 pounds of meat, depending on where I butcher it out at. And that'll feed my family for 2 to 3 meals. Sometimes more, depending on what I'm cooking. Now, my family's not the largest, we feed about 4 people. So you can do it, definitely, but I highly suggest against it. Alright, so I have a litter that's getting close to weaning age, so we're going to play the heck no or let it grow out a little more game. So let's get to it. So we're going to start off with this little chocolate doe. To be honest, I actually really like this doe. She is a gorgeous little baby, but I have somebody who's been on my wait list now for 6 months who's been waiting for a chocolate to show, and I actually think this is going to do very well for her considering how well it's developed at this age, so it's going to go to another program. Next is my grouchy little Vienna marked blue baby, who would not pose for the life of me, and when we did get her to pose, looked ugly. I promise she is gorgeous posed. We're going to keep her for a little while and grow her out. Next we have this little castor buck. To be honest, not horrible. I don't want any more castors, so I am going to grow him out a little bit and see how his rufous is. If his rufous is pretty good, I'll go ahead and sell him to a program that needs a low rufous castor. Next we have this little lynx baby. I'm really enjoying this little lynx doe. I think she's going to be tucked in the hind end, but I'm not quite sure because of how young she is, so I'm going to grow her out. This little castor doe, not happening. It's very long, almost tube sock-like-ish. I highly doubt that we're going to be able to fix that shoulder as she gets older. We are probably going to cull her. I want to like this black. I honestly do, but there's something not happening. I don't know if it's the shoulder mixed with the high point or what. I'm going to grow her out a little bit, but I have a feeling I'm not going to be able to keep her. I'm not liking it. But ultimately, I would love to keep that little lynx and the blue in my program, but we will see how they grow out. Those are my 2 favorites out of this litter other than the chocolate. Everything else is either looking at being a hard or soft call, either through the form of being put on our dinner table or going to somebody else's program. But I'm going to give them another probably month to grow out to seed. First off, I want to make it very clear that there's nothing wrong with this question above. I have a lot of new followers, or I have people that will just randomly stumble upon my page via the FYP. So when it comes to pet sales, I don't really do that. And when I say don't really, it's because I do have a couple of pet sales, so to speak. But they're 4-H kids that are normally in their first year of 4-H. They want to try showing rabbits, and anyone who's in the rabbit industry knows the first time you show a rabbit, that rabbit normally ends up as a house pet. For instance, I just sold a pet, so to speak, that was a show rabbit to a breeder who's been raising Flemish Giants, and her child was getting into 4-H, and they wanted her to show something smaller, so they bought one of my mini Rex. And it was very clear very quickly that that mini Rex was going to end up in the child's room after it was done being showed, which I'm perfectly okay with. I don't sell to a lot of true pet homes because it just causes a whole bunch of problems. We have a difference on how care should work, how feeding should work, and a bunch of other little things that just make it not worth it to me. I follow the directives of studies done by professionals through different agricultural colleges as well as the ARBA, and most of the time they don't. So I do worry about my rabbits being properly cared for. Another thing is the main byproducts that I get off of my rabbits are meat and fur. Although I love showing my rabbits, and I probably have way too many mini Rexes, we'll be real about that, I will eat any of the rabbits in my barn because primarily that is what they are here for. If I stopped showing tomorrow, most of my mini Rex stock would be sold off to other barns as breeding stock, or would be eaten so that I could make room for meat, because I'm still going to raise rabbits. It's just maybe someday I don't want to show anymore. Probably not going to happen, but maybe someday. So this is how I sustain my family. And for me, it is better to eat the poor quality stock than to push it off on someone else. The rabbit community is very small and close-knit, and I don't want to have a name for myself as selling crap stock to people who don't know any better. So that little castor doe that's super sweet, she would end up on the show table and she would do horrible. Or somebody would add her to a breeding program and she would spread that really long shoulder to her offspring. And it's just not worth it in many ways to keep her. But she can help sustain my family in the form of food and for pelt. So yeah, that's why I don't really do pets. So castor is a color, and I'll show you kind of the difference between high and low rufous castor, but you'll have to excuse the flop that is going on in my barn. It is very hot. This is a high rufous castor. She's almost like an orange color, and if you blow in on her rings here, she has different rings of color going down to the skin. She is slightly off standard in that she did have point reductions, but she does have a best of variety and a best of group on her. Amazing type, great producer, great mom. This is a low rufous castor, and it does have baby coat still on it, as you can see on the gray, but when he grows up, that baby coat will shed out and have a dark, almost black color on top. The low rufous castor is a baby, so it doesn't have any kind of leg or competition wins. But technically, the low rufous castor is more on standard. So I'm lucky in that our heat index is currently about 85 degrees. It's still not great for rabbits, but it could be a lot worse. I'm giving them the option of laying on frozen water bottles or ice packs. I'm wetting their ears with diluted isopropyl alcohol so that it can cool their core temperatures down. My babies, like my itty bitty like newborn babies, are in the house right now being shelved because if they're left outside, they will die. And then we have the fan running in the barn. And I've been out there about every hour or so just checking to make sure no one's getting like too hot. And then of course they have access to fresh ice water that I've been changing out every 2 hours. I think the right word for here is I'm panicking. We haven't lost anybody yet, but that's because I know how to deal with this and that I've been doing this for a while. But I honestly feel for the people that are in these really, really hot climates right now with the heat wave going through. My friend just lost an entire litter of babies because her air conditioning unit just went out. So I really wish everyone the best of luck, and hopefully this heat wave is going to pass fast. So basically the way a show works is you spend so much time, like years, trying to perfect your breed. Like you spend hours and hours just grinding, trying to breed the right rabbits together, culling the appropriate ones, and just putting in a lot of hard work. To pay for one, if not, this last show I went to, I paid for 3 people to basically tear apart my lines. They did have good things to say, but sometimes I was like, oh, why'd you have to do my rabbit like that? And I'm speaking as someone who came home with multiple best of breeds. Like, I know my stock is pretty good, but sometimes it's like a little ouch moment. Like when Strawberry got DQ'd for being a couple ounces overweight. That hurt a little bit. Because he wasn't like that the day before. In a day, he just put out just enough to get DQ'd, or our scales were slightly different, whatever the case may be. So you go, you hurry to get into the show, and then you wait around for your rabbit to be on the table for like 2 minutes. The judge will pick it up, roll it over, kind of give you the pros, the cons, and then they'll place you in a running. Now, you have best of group, best of variety, best of breed, and best of show, each going up more sequentially better. They also have something called best opposite, and then they'll also have like runner up for the best of show. But basically, you get your placing, and sometimes you get absolutely nothing, and then sometimes you get a nice little homemade gift. If you're in one of the larger breeds, such as Mini Rex or Dutch this last time, you will get a nice little thing that says best of breed on it. If you are not in one of the more popular breeds, you get pat on the head, told good job, and go to best of show. All this to say, the show I went to, between driving there, my hotel, the entrance fees, the food I bought, I probably spent about $500 last weekend. Which is another reason I don't go to show often, is because it's very costly. For all of that, I got some yellow slips of paper. And those yellow slips of paper just tell me how good my animal did. And that's it. So all of this is just for fun. I love shows so much. I meet some amazing people. I have, like, just a blast there. But if prices keep going up, I'm not going to be able to afford it. And I have yet gone to a show where they pay me. And that includes nationals. So yeah, I wish we got paid. But it's just in the fun of it. So we have to bring these guys inside because of how hot it is. But they are about a week old. I was right in saying that we did have a Harlequin type baby. Although it's a normal Harlequin and not a magpie. And what I thought were white or Charlie rabbits are really weird. I have this tan and white one, which I'm not sure if it's just trying to be a tricolor with no tri in it, or if it's just a color that's not acceptable, like a red and white in Mini Rex. With that being said, I have no idea. The rabbit I thought was a Charlie is actually a very, very lightly marked tricolor. Our little Vienna baby. And the 3 broken blacks that are like mom and dad. We have 2 blanket type patterns and 1 spot pattern. And then along with this litter of 7, Sadie had her litter a few hours later. Mostly casters and broken casters, but we do have 1 self black. So first of all, if you're looking for starter stock, the best thing you can do is learn your SOP. So most of your meat rabbits are going to be in a commercial type. So I'm talking about like your Californians and your Rex, for instance. And the commercial type sets it up to where you can get the best rabbits for your meat yield. So the reason why they are typed the way they are typed, and the SOP states that their body has to be in a certain condition, is because of meat yield. So you want to get stock as close to the SOP as you can get. And for those of you who aren't following me for long, when we're talking about SOP, we're talking about the standard of perfection put out by the ARBA. Another very important thing is to look at grow out rates. You want the fastest growing rabbits possible for the least amount of input. So low feed input, high weight output. And a lot of breeders will have for you their average weights per week or when they butcher out, or how fast it takes them to get a rabbit to 5 pounds for a butcher out. And then the last thing I would do is talk to local breeders in the area, maybe go to a show and talk to other people and see if they have any advice on what you should avoid or who you should go to. Because the thing is you might pay slightly more for better stock, but in the long run, it's better for your pockets. Because you already have animals to the standard of perfection to grow out fast to give you the best outcome possible. And then also, I always say to start slow with a buck and a doe. But the best thing that you can also do if you're willing to have this many rabbits at once is if you get 4 animals at the same time, 2 bucks, 2 does, and you can run multiple lines at the same time and you won't need an outcross as often. In fact, if you do it the correct way, you could potentially never need an outcross again as long as you are very carefully line breeding and heavily culling. And as always, when it comes to breeds, when we're looking at strictly meat, Californians reign supreme. They are the fastest growing meat rabbits I have ever seen. But they're butt faces, and they're really hard to handle sometimes because they're spastic. Great backups to Californians, in my opinion, are Rex and Silver Foxes. The Silver Fox are super sweet and easy to handle, but sometimes hard to find because they are a rare heritage breed. Or at least it's hard to find quality stock. If you're willing to have something that grows out a little slower in exchange for a rainbow of colors, go for Rex, plus they're super soft. But yeah, I would love to hear other breeders' advice for first-time meat breeders down in the bottom when it comes to picking out your first stock.